Good evening, everybody. This is Elena Bartosh, your real estate investor. And today, my podcast, as usual, about private money lending. Uh, every real estate investor needs to have lenders to lend on our deals. And me, as a member of large real estate investors community sub2, I have communications with lenders all the time. I know them as in my friends sometimes, and I know how it's not easy sometimes to meet them, to find them, to build relationship. And there is not only mindset could be involved in building a relationship with private money lenders. There is a science, and knowing rules of this science, you can help yourself to make your deals funded. And today my guest is awesome person, Rick Otton. Rick is author of the 5 books that could help you to find funds for your real estate deals. Rick is on the real estate market for more than 40 years. He has massive experience. So I believe this podcast will be blessed. Plus, in the end of podcast, Rick will offer you a couple free materials which would help you to understand how to work more better and more productive with lenders. Okay, guys, meet Rick. Hi, Rick.
Hi, everybody. G'day, Eleanor.
Hi, Rick. Thank you so much for being today. My guest, it's awesome. It's my honor to have you today. How are you?
Where am I right now? I'm actually in Bali.
Oh, wow. Lucky you. How is weather in Bali?
It's one of the fastest growing property markets in the world, so I had to drop by.
Oh, wow. Of course. I believe every human being should go there at least once in our life.
Well, yeah. Everybody should get to go everywhere. Everything's virtual these days.
Yes, I agree. Again, thank you so much, Rick, for your time, and thank you so much for accepting my invitation. And for those who does not know you, could you please tell people who is Rick Otton?
Okay, well, I started back there in Dallas, Texas. I started a We Buy Houses business back in '89, and I started buying houses from failed banks and the FDI's, RTC, which was the Resolution Trust Corporation. So I was buying a lot of banks properties from the US government. I mean, in those days, I was buying condominiums for like $1,000 from the Fed. And then I just was in Dallas last week. They're like $250,000 now. So it was great buying. And then I took the We Buy Houses organization across the world and rewrote all the laws for the different countries. So now We Buy Houses in about 12 countries around the world. And then I took it into Asia in the last couple of years because Asians don't have financing for property. You have to pay all cash. And so many Americans are buying in Asia and Europe, they didn't have all the cash. So I brought financing into Asia to make it easy. So basically, that's one side of it. So I've been in property for I bought my first house in 1977. So that's one side. But the other side is I was involved in the very first book on body language written in 1980. I was involved in that from 1978. Where the science actually didn't exist. We only had Darwin's Book of Evolution and 5 scientific journals. And Alan P said to me, would you be interested in getting involved in a book on body language? And it was breaking new ground. The subject didn't exist. Well, here we are 40 years later. The book sold over 19 million copies around the world. And I did talk language. And then I got into this thing called subliminal science for about the last 40 years, because when we communicate with people, 7% of the words we use, 38% is the tonality of those words, but 55% of all the messaging you ever send to anybody is what's called subliminal science. And it's the thing that gives people a gut feeling or a hunch. They just don't know at a conscious level to read the signals and the signs of the messaging that they're receiving. And that is the bit that, because I've had so many years in real estate, people were always saying, Rick, why don't you do subliminal science for real estate? Because everybody would just close that many more transactions if they just understood subliminal science and how it works.
It's awesome. Thank you so much, Rick. My gosh, I had so many beautiful, great, and knowledgeable guests People explain us how to find lenders. People explain us how to raise capital, how to be private money lender, how to build relationship with lenders. But nobody yet gave us any science about how to get your deals funded. So,
well, I tell you what, the best way for me to do it, Ellen, is if I walk you through a transaction from beginning to end. And so people can see the components of subliminal science coming together, and they can really see how they can change their presentation style, because that can have a lot to do. It's not about having more presentations. It's just about having a high percentage of people wanting to give you the form and do the deal. Do you understand?
yep, it's awesome. Okay, so let's build our conversation today around your theory, around your books, around all information that includes in the subliminal science. Okay, tell
Okay.
us please a little bit more.
Okay, so I'm going to step you through. I'm going to imagine I'm turning up at someone's place. Let's say some guy's a private lender, and he wants me to come over and speak to him about maybe borrowing some money, and I want him to be my private lender. Okay, so I'm going to tell you this, all the steps. First of all, I knock on the door at the front door. If I knock on the door fast, the man will run to the front door. If I knock slowly, he'll stroll the front door. If you want to test this with your friends, start knocking slowly and then start increasing the knock rate. People start running past to the front door. When the person comes to the front door, the first thing I'm going to do is start wiping my feet on the mat. Even if it's not wet, when I wipe the feet, the subconscious mind reads, come in. They'll invite me in every time because they're looking at the wiping of the feet. Okay. That means I don't have any confrontation and end up standing on the front door of someone's house. Then usually rooms within a house are very important. People will always take you, the first room they're going to take you into is what I call the community room, which is like the living room, the lounge room, the room where the TV is, where all the people hang out. That's the first room you normally get invited to. Rooms have zones, and we've got to be very careful about what room we go into, that we don't go into the wrong bedroom. If you want to test this, walk into someone's house and walk into the bedroom, see how you go. So rooms have territories. So you're always going to go to the communal room, okay? Now, people, you never talk about a deal, and you never talk about private lending, and you never talk about putting a deal together in this room. It is the wrong room. It's a disaster. That's the room where you get to know each other. Hey, you got kids, you got pets, you got dogs. Hey, wow, who? Okay. So usually there's two disturbances in someone's house, and I want to get 100% of someone's attention. In order to do that, I've got to get 100% of their focus. I have to remove all the elements. The two elements are usually the television and children. To get rid of the television, you can't ask people to turn their TV off, because you're going into people's personal zone and that'll offend them. What you do is you just say, sir, let me ask you something. Do you mind if you can just turn that TV down just a little bit? People will always turn it off, but you only ever ask them to turn it down. Second thing is kids. You can't tell people to get rid of their kids because they put them in a cage. But the kids are there. But you've got to get rid of the kids. The way you get rid of the kids is, as the other people are talking to you, you keep laughing and smiling with the kids, because the kids are distracting you. The person will be so annoyed that their information is being hindered by their own kids. They will get their kids and scream at them and tell them to get out of the room. Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely makes sense. Yep.
So now I've got rid of the kids. I got the TV out of the way. I got total control of the people in the room. Next thing is, people always offer you a cup of tea, cup of coffee, cup of water, something like this. Always take the glass of water. Now, as you're sitting there chatting about the weather and how are you and what do you do, we chat for a while. It's all about building rapport. In this room, we only ever build rapport. We don't talk business. Then I'm going to finish this water. Now, here's the next bit. I've only got a period of time, and people are only going to buy from me and be my private lender if they like me. If we're not friends, they're not going to do business with me. So therefore, at a subliminal level, they have to like me and they have to think of me as their friend. If they don't, they will not do business with me. Do you understand?
Yep. Makes
Friends
sense.
come first. Okay. So therefore, I have to move the environment into the friend room. The friend room in the house is the kitchen. That's why parties always start in the kitchen. And when your friends always come over, they come and hang out in the kitchen. So what happens is I've got to change the energy of the room to the energy of the kitchen in order for these people to like me and for me to be accepted into their house and now be seen as their friend. Because once they see me as a friend, then I can do business. So what I'll do is I'll finish the glass of water, and then I'll say, I'll tell you what, I'll cough a few times. I'll pick up my empty glass, go into the kitchen, say, stay there. I know where it is. Wait, back 1 second. I'll go into the kitchen, get the other glass of water. Now, here's the thing. When I go into someone's kitchen to get a glass of water, who do you think is going to come straight in after me?
Children.
Yeah, well, actually, in fact, the territory is owned by a kitchen is actually owned by the housewife. So she's going to come straight in. Always and says, let me do that for you. Let me look after it. I know where everything is, blah, 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 blah. So the housewife's going to come in. I've now got her in the kitchen. She'll get me the glass of water. I'm going to stand there. The husband will normally come in about 20 seconds later because he's not going to let me stay in his kitchen with his wife. If he doesn't come into the kitchen, just start giggling and laughing a little bit, he'll be straight in. So now everybody's in the kitchen. Now I'll get my glass of water. Now I'm leaning against the kitchen, and now we're chatting. Now we're becoming friends, but the zone has changed. Okay? So now I've changed the zone, and now we're all friends, and I've got acceptance of being a friend in the kitchen. I still can't talk business. I can talk concepts, but I can't talk detail. So we can talk about private lenders I've had in the past and ones I've done this and deals I've done. And I remember having a private lender in Japan, and he bought his lawyers called Sosumi. And I can tell all sorts of great stories, but I can't go into detail in the kitchen. It's the wrong room. What I got to do is when you're in the house, you always got to look at where the tables are. So if we think about the human mind, we always make decisions behind a table. So what happens is between 9 and 5, we're usually at a table with a desk and a chair and a laptop computer like I am now. I'm in my office. And so that's when we switch into business mode. In switch business mode, we make decisions all day long and we're comfortable. But we don't make business decisions in the backyard. We don't make business decisions in the front yard. We don't make business decisions in the community room. And if I get that environment right, when someone's in their dressing gown and slippers and flippy floppies, they're not in business mode and they will not make decisions. What they'll say is, let me think about it and get back to you. And quite often, if we don't understand this, and people say, let me get out and get back to you, it's because you're presenting it, asking people to make a decision, and the zone has not been correctly set up. So what happens? I've already figured out where the table is in the house, and there's a dining room table or a kitchen table, whatever it is. But I know that in order to put this deal together and to get people to switch from the friend into business, I'm making decisions now, it's got to be done at a table. Now, most people's houses have got crap all over them, right? There's got glasses and all sorts of coffee. There's just crap all over people's houses. It's just how we all live. It's just the world. Well, I can't just go over to someone's table and just wipe all their crap off the table, right? Because they'll freak out. And again, I'm invading people's territories. You can't do that in people's houses. Again, it's like going to someone's bedroom. Excuse me? You've got to be invited, right? So what happens? But I got to get the stuff off the table in order to put this thing together. So I do what's called a helicopter. Now, the helicopter is I'll stand up the table. I'll have a clipboard. I always have a clipboard with only 2 pieces of paper. Remember, the man with a clipboard is always deemed to have all the authority, more authority than the man who has no clipboard. So I'll stand in my clipboard, 2 pieces of paper. Let me show you something. Now, I'll put my little clipboard above the table and do a helicopter like this. Like I want to now, as I've got to do a little helicopter because I'll be standing up, but I'm obviously sitting down now. I won't stand up. You won't see me. You'll just see my belly button, which my wife thinks is cute, but you may not. Anyway, so I'll do the helicopter. As I've got the helicopter, the people will start moving all the stuff off the table. Do you understand?
Yep.
And with all the stuff off the table, they go, oh, let me clear the table. Oh, okay, great idea. And they'll clear the table off, and then I'll land. Now, as I land a little, I'll sit down. Now, when I sit down, people will automatically sit down. Does that make sense? And if for some reason they stay standing, just talk to their belly button. Just keep talking to them with their belly button, and people go like this. And slowly they sit down, right? So now we're all sitting at the table. Now I can talk details. But how I talk details and how I present it is very, very important. Let's say I've got my private lender. He's at the table. He's sitting there in front of me. And I got the proposal because he says to me, well, you know, what do you got for me to look at, right? Well, I've got to be very careful because I'm there actually to do the deal. I'm not there to show paperwork. I never go to a house to show a house. I there go to sell it or buy it. If you want to look at houses, I always say to people, go on the internet. Now, here's the thing. He's on the other side of the table and I'm on this side of the table and I've got my little papers of my proposal because I want him to be my private lender. You with me so far?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Because how I present this is very important. We all have zones. The human zones are 3. The first zone is from 0 to 3 inches from the body. The only people we let into that zone are our lovers and our family. And if you want to test it, if we go into someone's zone without permission, the body gets anxious, goes into a state of anxiety, and in that mode cannot make a decision. An anxious body in a state of anxiety will never make a decision to do anything. They'll always defer it by saying things like, let me think about that and get back to you. So therefore, it's very important that I understand people's zones and people don't experience anxiety or because my deal will be dead. So therefore, if I understand that, I can't go into a zone without permission. So from 0 to 3 inches is my lover or the family and the kids. That's the only person you can let into that zone. The next zone is 12 inches from the body.
Rick, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I believe you just telling us about European mentality, about European psychology, maybe American, because I know for Asian people, it's different numbers. For Arabian people, it could be different.
Smaller.
Yeah,
they're tighter. Yeah,
for Asian people, smaller.
Correct. So I'm assuming right now you're in the United States. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, correct.
Now,
and for Arabian people, it could be numbers should be higher because they really appreciate this distance more than Europeans and Americans.
People. Correct. So if I go a personal zone in the West is for the cities 12 inches. You got a country person, it's got to be 18 inches. And that's why a city person bends their arm when they shake hands, but a country person extends it because their zones are bigger. You go to China, that's 0 to 3 inches, forget it. It's 0. And that's why people find it very frustrating that they'll go into a supermarket, and I'm in Asia now, and they say, look, all these people just get on top of you because their zones are different. They're different from Western zones. But I'm just have to work on the basis that I'm talking to a US market. I know a lot of guys in real estate and women, and I have to generalize. Because if I get into the differences, this is going to be 12 hours. Remember, I've only been doing the science for 40 years. So there's a variety on everything, right? But I've got to give you some frameworks or people won't get an understanding. But yeah, Asian zones are going to be different. Arab zones are going to be bigger. But I just can't go through every race. Okay, so even the body language, if we go down that, everybody says things differently with body language. We're not going to go there. So the point is this. When I move that document on the table, I can't put the document more than halfway across the table because I'm in what's called territory zones now. Territories means that at a subconscious level, you've already divided the table in 2. Half of that table is yours and half of that table's mine. It's a territory line. I can't move a document past that territory line. And if you want to understand territory lines, next time you go out for dinner with your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your husband, or your wife, they usually put all the salt and pepper and drinky stuff in the middle of the table. Use it, put it 1 inch back inside the other person's territory line, and subconsciously they'll push it back 1 inch. They won't even know they did it. They'll always keep pushing things back to the middle. And that's why when you go to a restaurant, when people finish a meal, they always want to get rid of the plate because now it becomes invasive in their territory. They get anxious. They start shutting down. They're not relaxed anymore. The plate's got to go. So they'll get someone to come and get it. They push it to one side or move it to another table. So what we do with documents, where people sometimes get this wrong, they put the documents in front of the person to read. But you've just put documents in front of someone's territory zone without having permission for that to be there. They're going to shut down on you. So what you do is you only put the document halfway across the table. In order for the person to read the document, they have to lean forward, change their body language. It becomes more open body language because they now have to put their hands out to receive the document, and then they pull it into their own territory. Now they're taking acceptance of your document as they bring it into their own territory. You didn't push it on someone. You with me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Now, in a perfect world, I don't want to talk to a guy about my proposal from across the table, because we got this thing. It's like tennis. I got this territory line in the middle, and it doesn't matter what I'm going to say. He's going to probably disagree with me, argue with me, whatever. I have to move the territory line so that as far as he's concerned, we're both singing from the same song sheet. So if I'm going to talk to somebody about what's on the document, which is exactly what he wants me to do, he wants me to explain to him what's on the document. What I'll do is, in a perfect world, I want to be next to him. If I'm next to him, I can create a cocoon environment. It's like two lovers together. I want to create an environment where he feels like I'm his best friend. He feels like we're in the trenches together in Vietnam. He feels like we're lovers, because if he likes me and he feels like we're singing from the same song sheet, he'll do business with me, because we're so alike, we're so in tune with each other. But I've got to move around the table. What I used to do when I learned this back in the late 70s, early 80s, what I did there then was very different from what I do now. I'll tell you what I used to do then, just because we got time. I knew that I had to get around the other side of the table to present the document, or it's not going to work. So I had to find an excuse to get around the other side of the table. You can't just walk around and sit next to the person, because they're going to wonder, what are you doing? What are you moving? You were sitting over there. What are you doing here? So what I used to do was I used to lean back on my chair like this. Now, this is a self-confidence gesture and an ownership gesture. Whenever you do that, the guy that owns the house will read it, and he'll immediately do that, because he wants to tell me that he owns the house and he's more important than I am. So then I'll lean back on my chair. Well, he'll lean back on his chair. The person who leans back the most on their chair owns the room, but it's all subliminal. So what happens is, I lean back, he'll lean back more, I'll lean back, and he'll like, so we're right back, leaning back on our chair. Now, what he doesn't know is my right leg, I normally hook my right leg under the crossbar under the table. So when I go back, I'm supported by the crossbar on the table. He usually goes back. The whole chair falls back. He's flat on his back. And then I run around the table, go, wait. Come around. Let me help you. And then I put him back up in his chair. And I go, you know what? I better stay right here, because it's going to be a disaster if I leave you by yourself. Right? And I used to use that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I don't do that anymore, because I remember I taught this to a room of people about 45 or 50 a few years ago. And they looked at it and thought, hang on, that's something I did when I was a teenager. Okay, we don't do that anymore. Here's how we do it. What I'll do is, he's got the document, he's starting to read the document. What I'll do is, I'll say to him, I want you to read section 7, paragraph 2 on the third sentence in. Now, as he starts to read that, I go, wait, no, it's section 1, fourth paragraph. No, actually, in fact, when I think about it, it's the last paragraph, second sentence, the first 9 words. Now, what happens is, by 3 different instructions like that, I'm going to totally bamboozle him. Now I've got the excuse to come around and go, wait, sorry, I think I'm a bit confused. Let me sort this out. Now I've got social permission to come around the table to sort it out. Okay? Now, the side of the table I go around is very important. If he's right-handed, I've got to go around and be on his left. If he's left-handed,
why?
I've got to be on his right. Here's why. If he's right-handed, okay, and I'm on the right, this side, when he does that, I'm left-handed. I talk with my left hand. He talks with his right hand. We all use expressions in our speech. We go blah, blah, blah. As he uses his right hand and I use my left hand, and we're next to each other, we will create what's called environmental cocoon. We'll feel like it's just him and I in the world, and it creates a cocoon. And what this does, we've moved the territory line. The territory line is still in the middle of the table. I'm on his side of the territory line. We're in a cocoon, and we won't have any barriers to the conversation, to which he'll feel like we have so much in common and we get along so well. Now, don't worry if you screw this up, because I screw this up all the time. Quite often I'll go around the table and I'll forget and I go on the wrong side. So he's right-handed, okay, and I get on the wrong side. If I'm on the wrong side, every time he gestures with his hand, it will be between me and him. It will create a barrier, and we'll always have conflict, and we'll always be disagreeing and arguing. Now, knowing this, I've done it for so long that when I realize I've gone to the wrong side, I say, wait a second, don't move. And then I pick myself up and I run around and sit down the other side. And usually people start laughing, okay, when I do that. I don't know why I do it.
Yeah.
Okay? So there's two. It's like humor. The lighter and brighter and funnier I make it, the more I remove the anxiety out of a room. Okay? So people always say to me when I do live events, they go, Rick, yours isn't a real estate show. It's like one big comedy show. And I say, the reason I've got to keep you guys laughing, I've just put you in a room with 300 people you don't know, you're always going to get anxious and shut down. But if it's funny and humorous, it gives you something to have a connection with the person next to you. You both laugh at the same joke. Oh, yeah, funny. And I've just changed territory lines and I've made you more at ease. Okay. Anyway, so here's the deal. I'm now on the right side of the guy and I've picked the right side. I'm sitting with him, okay? When you stand around, go next to it, it's very important. Do not be taller than they are. So you've got to lower yourself. So no chair, you lower yourself to about 1 inch or 2 below them. Never be taller. No one likes to be stood over. So if you're taller, their brain goes, you're standing over me. What makes you think you stand over me? Okay. So it's a breakdown, right? So what happens is you always lower yourself. Sometimes if it's a chair, and I'm a tall guy, I'm right at 6'1", I'll even lower the chair to get down a little bit lower. You understand? Okay. So now here's the next bit that people don't get. And this is the magic. Well, there's lots of magic so far. But this is the thing that gets you from one presentation out of 10 to like 10 out of 10, right? Okay, now. So far I've gone through the zones, I've understood the territories, I've kept the language very simple. I never use more than 2 syllables and 8 letters. If you look at my book, I'm going to give you later, it's all designed for 2 syllables, 8 letters, so it's easy processing for the brain. So here's the thing. This is a pen. And the pen is not for you to write with. The pen is for you to control people's inputs into their brain. So I can control what goes into your brain and how you think by using this pen. So although you only paid $1 for it at the shop, it's worth millions of dollars. I'm going to show you how to use it right now, okay? Now, I love this stuff. I just love it. People, there's a couple of things the brain can't do. The brain cannot read and comprehend what it's reading and listen at the same time. It's impossible. What people do, because they don't understand this science, is people start to read something and people start explaining it and telling them what they're reading and going, oh, well, what you're reading now is the clause that says blah, blah, blah. But it's impossible for the brain to read and comprehend and listen at the same time. When it has to fight between these two things, what it does is it defaults to listening. So what it says is they'll stop reading, default to listening to you out of social politeness, and their brain says, I will read this later when he has gone. But if he reads later when he's gone, I'm not walking out with this deal. I came there to do a deal. I didn't come there to drink their water. You understand? So therefore, I want this processed and I want to do the deal when I walk out. So what I do is, when I'm now explaining this document, people will always follow the end of a pen. You have a lot of fun with this. I'll give you a few exercises that people who are watching this could do in the public, and they'll just see how powerful these strategies are. It makes them laugh. With a pen, hold the pen up, take the lid off it, right? Go back. Okay. And what I want you to do right now, John, is look at section 3. Now, people follow the end of the pen. They will always follow the end of the pen. So the pen now goes and rests on section 3. While the pen rests on section 3, John will read section 3. He won't read section 4. He won't read section 2. He'll read section 3 because that's where the pen and the science of the pen has directed his subliminal thinking to go to. You understand?
Okay. Yeah.
When he's finished reading section 3, he'll raise his eyes up and look at me like this, which tells me he's finished reading section 3. Now I can talk, blah, 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 but I have to raise the pen. I have to disconnect the paper and the reading from the audio. So I lift the pen and I put it next to my head like this. Now, John, what you just read was blah, 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 blah. Now, as stupid as it looks, and the pen is next to my head like this, it's subconscious. It doesn't even notice it, right? So what you just read, John, in section 3 was the bit that says blah, 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 blah. But what's more important, John, is what's written in section 4. And then I use the pen, and the pen goes down. His eyes will follow the pen. Eyes will always follow the pen. He reads section 4. Now, when I don't want the person to read anymore, all I have to do is raise the pen, and people's eye line train will always follow the movement of a pen. Now, if for some reason you ever do this and you bring the pen up and he keeps reading, just go get the pen and just tap twice on the paper. Go tap, tap, and that just breaks his concentration. Go, oh, sorry, yeah. Well, and his eyes will come to the pen.
Oh,
now,
yeah.
Okay, now, where you can have a lot of fun with this is I always use a click pen. Okay, that goes click, 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 click. Because if I feel like there's too much anxiety in a room, I could reduce the level of anxiety in a room by slowing down the click pen rate. So I might start clicking fast. Yeah, that's a great idea. Now, as I start to slow the click rate, I can bring down the breathing rate, and I can change the oscillation rate of all this stuff, and people go, ah. Okay, but here's the point. Get a pen. Next time with your friends, have a pen. Start clicking it. While you're there and you're talking, move in the pen. Go, I've got this great idea.
Yeah.
They won't be looking at you. They'll be watching the pen. If you move the pen out there, they'll start looking at the pen. And then you'll go, and then we can do it this way. And they'll start watching the pen. And you'll actually watch people's eyes. They're following the pen. They're not actually looking at you, right? So the pen.
Magic.
Magic.
Funny magic.
Yeah, it's pen magic, right? So what it does, the pen can control the inputs, because I want to control what goes in. Does that make sense? And the rate at which it goes in. Yeah. Okay. Now, then when I'm doing so that gives you an idea. So just as you can see here, most of the communication is not in what I say. Most of the communication is understanding that the conscious, which receives the words, which is only 7%, blah, 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 doesn't make the decisions. It's the subconscious that makes all the decisions, and the subconscious makes emotional decisions, and later on finds the logic to justify an emotional decision. It's the subconscious that says to the conscious, I don't like this guy, find a way to get rid of him. It's the subconscious that says, oh my God, I'm falling in love with this guy, find a way for him to marry me. It's the subconscious that, in other words, the conscious is just the secretary. Yep. So subliminal science is talking to the subconscious, understanding that the subconscious is the boss, knowing that the boss gives the decisions and the instructions to the secretary. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. And so there, now, the other thing is too, is when I'm doing a document with a private lender and I want the guy to do the deal, sometimes people go through a whole document and then they ask the guy to make a decision. So what do you think? And the guy says, well, it's interesting, or I'll think about it. And then they say something like, well, what do you want to think about? And the guy goes, well, I just want to think about everything, discuss it with my wife. Because here's the deal. You can't give people a forest question. It must be a tree question. So, for instance, if I said to you, how was your holiday in Europe last year? You can't answer that. You'll just say it was good. But I say, when you're in Munich on the 22nd of February, what was it like being in Munich on the 22nd of February? Well, actually, it was really cold. And that day we went to the fair and had lunch at a great restaurant. So you can answer that because I pulled a tree out of the forest. When you present documents and you want people to sign on as a private lender, you've got to present one section at a time. You've got to close the gate. So what happens is I said, let me ask you something. Talking about money here, people lend, I never get people, by the way, to lend me money. They lend me units of money. So if you want someone to lend you 100,000, in their brain, it's a big amount of money, okay?
Oh, yeah.
But if every unit's only 20,000, okay? My units are 20,000, I pay 15%. So for every 20,000 you lend me, every unit, you get $250 a month. How many units do you want? Give me 5. So it's 100, but I sell them in units. People can get to 5 very easily, but they just give me 100,000. But I don't ask for money. I tell them it's always in units. Some guys give me 3 units, 2 units, 10 units, 20 units. And for every unit you give me, it's $250 a month, which is 15%. It's easy for the brain to process when you break this thing down into units, and I've also taken away the emotion of money. The reason why casinos don't use money is that no one would spend it. So there's too much emotion around money. So what they do is they give you a piece of wood because there's no emotion around wood. So therefore you'll spend the wood you'll throw around, right? Okay. When you're asking people for 100,000 or 200, there's a lot of emotion around money. I got to strip the emotion out of it. So I make it items. They're units. Each unit's got 20,000. Do you want 3 units? Do you want to have 3 units today and get 1 extra unit every month, or 5 units, or upgrade to 10 units? Once I change the dynamics from money and call it units, I'm taking out a lot of the emotion. And it's making people now, numbers are smaller. Now we're talking about 2 units, or I'll start with 1 unit and do 3 units, and each unit's 20 grand. Okay, so I went off the track a little bit, but anyway, every bit of that agreement, every section of the agreement, we go through, and I say, John, read this bit. Okay, let me ask you something. Based on reading that bit, what would you find out of that section is the least interesting? Because here's the deal. People will never tell you what they don't like. If you say, what don't you like? They'll say, oh, no, it's great, it's great, it's great. But they'll always tell you what bit they find the least interesting. And when they tell you what's the least interesting, they're actually telling you what they don't like. I've just used a different language palette. Okay?
Okay.
Right?
How to recognize this language?
Yeah, so people are never going to tell you they don't like you. But what they'll say, let me ask you something. I know she's an interesting woman. Which bit would you find the least interesting? In actual fact, when I buy houses, if it's a hot market, you say, let me ask you something. What house is not selling? And they go, everything's selling. It's a hot market. You're an idiot. Everything's selling. I say, let me ask a different question. Which house do you reckon is least hot? Well, the least hot house is this one. Well, that's the one that's not selling. You've just got to frame the language up differently, right? Okay, let's get back to our document. Each section of the document must be shut off and closed before you go to the next section. And I'll tell you why. Yep, he agrees with the interest rate. He agrees with the time frame. These are sections. Let me ask you something, John. How do you feel about 15%? Is 15% on your money an amount of money that you'd be comfortable about? Tell him, yep, he's happy with that. Tick that box. If I paid every 90 days, the 15%, if I paid you every 90 days, would that time frame have to be shorter or longer? No, I'm happy with every 90 days, whatever it is. You tick that off. My point is this. You break your proposal with your private lender in small components to which each one's ticked off. Then you say to him, I've got a penalty interest rate here that if I don't pay you, I pay you an extra 2%. Based on what you've done in the past, does that work for you? He might say, well, I'm not sure. You're not sure it does, or you're not sure it doesn't? Well, maybe. Maybe it does, or maybe it doesn't. That's a fact. We go no further. We have to stop there, because if I go past it on a maybe or not too sure, it'll kick me in the ass later, and that's the reason why he won't do the deal. So right there, this negotiation stops until that bit is sorted. So you can never go to the next stage of a negotiation unless that particular section has been ticked, and it's called one-step negotiation. And the reason is, when your deal's not coming together, you know exactly why it's not coming together, because you disagreed on the fact that you wanted to pay a 2% extra on the penalty interest, and he wants you to pay a 5% more on the penalty interest. You're not agreeing on it. So you say, John, you want 15% on the penalty interest. I'm thinking 12. So what you're really saying is, John, is we're 3% apart. So really what we're really doing is discussing over 3% based on the fact that I don't pay you. But if I pay you, we're not discussing about anything, right? We're actually discussing about air. What you can do, your whole negotiation, is to whether or not you're doing this. You might say to him, John, let me ask you something. On this whole private agreement, based on the fact that we've looked at every section, it sounds to me like you're happy with that. The only bit right now that stops you being a happy camper is the difference between a 12% penalty interest and a 15% penalty interest. Is that right? Yes. But now you know that's the tree, not the forest. Now you know by doing it as a one-step negotiation what it is stops that deal coming together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So now you're arguing or discussing over 3%. But what it does, it takes something that's very big. You might be doing a $10 million private land or a £1 million private land. Well, now you've got the whole thing done, except for the difference between a penalty interest of 12% and 15%. Right? And then that can be discussed out, worked out, or whatever. But at least it puts you in a position where you can solve that. Now, a couple of things that are always frame-ups whenever I go to any meeting with anybody. I want to make sure that there has to be a setup of 5 questions because I want to do this deal tonight. I don't want to do this deal next week, and I never go back to a property a second time. So when I'm scraping my feet and I'm wiping those feet, they've opened the door and said, come on in, right? First question. Let me ask you something, John. Why did you want to see me here today? Now, I know why I'm there. He knows why I'm there, but I want to change the positioning by simply saying, let me ask you something, John, why did you want to see me today? What it does, it sets up what's called the doctor analogy. It basically says, I'm the doctor, right? You're the patient. You're sick. I've got the prescription. And it's a shift because usually they think they're in the power. I can shift it by that one sentence. Let me ask you something, John. Why did you want to see me here today? Well, I thought we were going to talk about private money. Okay. Now, here are the next 4 questions. You've got to always have these, whether you're buying a house, selling a house, doing money. Okay. So based on that, we're talking about private money. At the end of the day, what's the outcome we would like to receive and get here today at this meeting? You must tell and agree on the outcome. Because if you don't agree on the outcome, you'll never get there. So he might say to me, well, I just want to talk to you about private lending. With the outcome being what? Because if there's no outcome, I'm probably not going to start the meeting. So he might say, well, the outcome is that to see if we can find terms on which you want to borrow my money and I'm going to lend it to you. Sounds fantastic. So let me ask you something. Knowing that that's the outcome we want to achieve, how much time we got? Right? Because I want to know that we've got enough time and I'm not going to be interrupted by him saying, well, in 15 minutes, I've got to go and pick up the boys from football. And in 30 minutes, I have to go shopping. And in 45, if I haven't got the time, I will always cut the meeting in 2. So he might say to me, well, we've got 30 minutes. I know that I can't build rapport, go through the kitchen, the desk, and get $1 million contract for private money in 30 minutes. I need more time. So if I says, look, I've got 30 minutes, then my wife's going to come home, the kids. Well, that's going to be no good because that'll disturb the energy in the room. What I'll do is I'll cut the meeting, but I'm setting it up now. I'll say, John, I tell you what, based on that, I was probably thinking in order for me to put a bucket load of cash in your pocket every month, I'm going to need more than 30 minutes. Why don't we do this tonight? Let's talk about concepts, what you've done in the past, what I've done in the past, get to know each other, share a glass of water, and then we'll have a second meeting when we'll just nail the details so I can start giving you some checks every month. And now we have the agenda of what's going to happen tonight. So that when we get there in 30 minutes, it's great, John, fantastic timeout, but you never give all the other stuff in that meeting. You must hold that out till the second meeting or the person will cancel the second meeting. But you've got to put a break so we all know what's going to happen tonight. We know the outcome. We know how much time we got. We know that what we're going to do in the time we have. So all the agenda's set out. The next thing is, John, let me ask you something. You've told me you've got an hour and a half. I can do the private lending, I can lend me the money. Blah. Let me ask you something. Besides you and me, who else needs to be at this meeting in order for this to happen tonight? Say nothing. Because you don't want what I call the unexpected expert who walks in at the very end to give their opinion on your deal, or he has to speak to his wife or his lawyer or his accountant or someone. I want them there now, and if I can't have them now, I'll reschedule. So he might say to me, well, I think I should discuss it with my wife. And I said, well, the last thing we want to do, John, is find out there's no presents at Christmas time for the kids because you lent all the money to a guy called Rick Otton, and didn't tell your wife.
Mhm.
I know where you'll be sleeping next week. Welcome to the garage. So he goes, yeah, okay. So my wife will be home in half an hour. Let's start there. If he's married, he's probably going to have to run this by his wife. And if she's not at the meeting, I don't start the meeting. Because then you get into Chinese whispers. He's trying to explain to her what happened in a meeting he had with me. She will ask him questions. He won't know the answers. He'll look stupid. Therefore, she'll tell him to shut the deal down and don't continue. So she has to be there. Now, the thing is, most men think that they control a household. They actually don't. Men just pay for it, but women usually make the decisions in the home. Some guys have figured that out. Some guys haven't, but you've got to understand a woman will usually control how a man thinks, but a man doesn't control how a female thinks. So she's got to be in the room, right?
Mhm.
So if
Yeah.
that's an issue, and she's coming home in 30 minutes, I'll tell you what, we'll talk about football. We'll talk about dogs. We'll talk about cats. But when the female gets there, she can't feel like she's missed out on some of the conversation. If she's missed out on some of the conversation, she'll whisper to her husband, darling, make no decision tonight so that you and I can talk first, which is a nice way of saying, so you can get me up to speed on everything I missed. So the conversation has to be when she finally comes home, go, hi, Mrs. Smith, how are you? I'm Richard. I bet your husband, Mr. Smith, is fantastic. In fact, we've actually been sitting here talking about roses and sidewalk pavements and the shopping. We've got so carried away talking about supermarkets, we haven't even got talking about what I came over tonight. Ha, 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 ho, ho, ho. But she goes, good, I haven't missed out on anything. Do you understand? Now, if the guy says, I need to run this by whatever I do tonight, I need to run by my financial planner or my lawyer. I said, well, I'm here and you're here. How long does it take for him to get here? Oh, well, I have to see him in his office. Well, he's probably a smart man or you wouldn't use him, right? Yep, you bet he's a smart man. He's probably got some intelligent questions, right? Yep. Well, let's just make sure we're both there to give him intelligent answers. So let's set up the thing where you're there, I'm there, he's there, we're all cocooned together so I can start sending you money every month. And I will schedule a meeting for the lawyer's office, the accountant's office, the solicitor's office, because if they're the resources the guy needs, this thing will never happen today. If I'm hung out by an accountant or a lawyer, I'll reschedule it for the lawyer's office, the accountant's office, the financial planner's office. Right? So no point in me starting. It's just not going to work because by the time I put this all together, you know that the lawyers are going to kill the deal. The financial planners will worry it's not legal. Someone else is going to tell you all the reasons it's never going to happen. Can I just tell? It's never going to happen, right? It's like, it's just how it is. So you've got to get, people need what I call support systems. Whenever I go to a meeting, I'm always the second smartest man. I never am the smartest man. If I'm smart, if the guy thinks I'm smarter than he is, he'll feel intimidated and will not want to make a decision without his lawyers, accountants, financial planners, all this stuff. So I don't know if you ever watched a show called Columbo. And Columbo was a TV show many years ago. Maybe some people, okay, I'm always Columbo. You'll notice how Columbo was never the smartest man. He's always the second smartest man. No one feels threatened. No one has anxiety. Everybody thinks, what's the worst this could guy? I mean, I never went to university. Hey. And as long as the guy thinks he's smarter than me, he'll keep moving forward in the negotiation. But if he thinks I'm smarter than him, I can't. So people sometimes, they give me a business card. They go, my business card, I'm an ABC, 1, 2, 3, do, re, mi. As you can see on my business card. I go, oh, I've never had a business card. You have a business card? Yeah, no, I could never figure it out. So people are immediately thinking, this guy's not too smart, which is what I want to think. Because in that environment, if he thinks he's smarter than me, he'll keep moving forward and he'll do the deal because what's the worst could happen? I'm a pretty stupid guy sitting there in the living room, right? So, so the point I want to make about the contracts is you've got to get the movements right and you've got to be very careful about zones. You've got to be very careful about territory lines or you'll screw it up. And you've got to get control of people's focus and the energy that goes in. It's very structured. I make it like a conversation, like I'm a guy down the road, the guy, Uncle Tom from next door, but it's just really structured, and then be in control of the delivery of the information. And then when you give the people the information, get it signed off on one step at a time. So when it doesn't come together, you're arguing over a tree, not a forest.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Well, at the
Thank you.
time, and I'm thinking, my God, I mean, I could talk with a mouthful of marbles under wet cement, but I better stop, right?
Yeah, time is flying. Yeah, thank you so much, Rick. And I believe you just share with us just very small amount of all information you have experience with. And as we spoke in the beginning of our conversation, you are a writer who wrote 5 books that could be
Yeah.
useful for real estate investors. And in the beginning, before we started our podcast, you shared with me you have something for our guys who watch us right now. Some
Yeah,
bonuses.
I tell you, I've got a couple of books out there that are pretty popular. One's called all about creative strategies, right? But the other one that's becoming more important is how to get people to give you money. And how to get people to give you money. It basically walks everything like why do I not pay restaurants? People just give me stuff, don't pay for clothes, stuff like that. So what it does, how to get people to give you money, walks you through all these subliminal components that you can put together, and it'll just mean that your closing rate will go through the roof. You don't have to spend any more money and get more leads, more prospects. You've just got to start converting 95% by adding in the subliminal science. So look, you can buy them on Amazon for $50, but I'll just give everybody a set. So I'll give you the links, and if people click through on the links, there'll be a special code. I'll set it up, and then people can just grab the books.
Oh, thank you so much. This is very generous from you, Eric. Awesome. Yeah, I'm always happy. My guests give some great value to our investors. And your knowledge is so much valuable. And thank you so much for your time. And thank you so much for being today with us. And guys, we who watch us right now, we probably have another several minutes left. If you have any questions to Rick, please feel free to ask. And Rick, again, thank you so much. After we will finish our podcast, Rick will send me a couple links, and I will post them under this video. So every who will watch us, who will watch recording, will be able to download book following the links under this video. Thank you so much, Rick.
Look, I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy you enjoy it. Yeah, because you like what you do, right? You like sharing with people. You like teaching people.
I love it because when you start practicing this stuff, the most exciting thing I have, it sounds so crazy, but when people get one little bit and do one bit at a time, then they see the reaction. They go, oh my God, I cannot believe it. 6 out of 7 people did the deal. And all I did was do that. It was all subliminal. People go, okay, yeah, like you're talking to the converted, right? But when people see the results from it, that for me is really exciting because it for people, it's like body language. People go, oh my God, this stuff really works. Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, we all have some body habits, some movements, something in our body language that we don't know, we don't realize, right? And especially when you do the business conversation, you need to understand what is matter, what is important. You need to be able to read body language of other people, gestures,
Yeah.
right? And to
Well, and you
understand.
can't control it. Like if you don't like me, let's say you think I'm a bad person. Well, your iris is going to shrink, right? And you can't control that. Your attitude, as soon as I see your shrinking iris, I know immediately you don't like me, right? So what I've got to do is I've got to get an expanded iris. So there's some certain things I can do, but it's told me what you think about me, and you never told me what you thought about me. I just read the body language, right? So body language tells me what's going on in your brain, right? And then when I've got to change things and move things around, just based on that. And it's something you can't really control. It's your brain controls it all, right? It's your mind, it's your thoughts. That's what's so exciting about that stuff. Because when you can read language, I've got a girlfriend, she hates me because I'll watch a movie with no sound. It drives her crazy. Because I'm going, well, why do I need the sound? I know what's going on.
Oh my gosh. Do you use this knowledge between your and your friends?
Yeah, all the time. I can't help it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me tell you something. Here's what, everybody's dating, right? Okay, for all the people who are dating each other here, here's the one thing you're doing wrong, right? Every boy and girl, go and talk like this. No, there's a territory line there, okay? You're going to be in conflict with the other person. What you should always do is you're going to talk to someone from the opposite sex, stand next to them, and talk about something in the party, on the wall, something else. As soon as you stand next to them, you've moved the territory line. It's now you two against them. So you might go, hey, what do you think of that painting on the wall? I've never seen a painting like that. What do you think? As soon as you've done that, don't talk about them. Talk about the third thing. You've moved the territory line, created the cocoon. The woman eventually says, I think I like that guy. If you're not too sure, just look at the feet. If the feet are pointing towards you, she loves you. If they're pointing away, leave. So the thing is, what happens is you can break down a lot of these awkwardness that people have in social environments if you just understand the movements, right?
Yeah. Thank you so much. It was just like a classroom for all of us who watch you right now to understand this another language, body language, psychological language, like eyes language. It's so cool. Yeah, and I believe people who will get your books, they will know even more, because 1 hour, we spent on our podcast already 56 minutes, and I believe it's far from enough to share all you know, right? It's far from
we
not
just
enough.
scratched the surface, but it was introducing people to something. It was like back in the 80s, introduced people to body language. Now that people are being introduced to it, they will start looking for more of it and getting a better understanding. It just expands their knowledge, right?
Yeah. Just practicing, reading people. Thank you so much, Rick. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for all this very cool information, very funny but very useful information.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to have you as a guest today. And thank you so much, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Rick. Thank you so much, people, for being today with us on this podcast. It was really funny. At the same time, it was very informative and useful. Yeah, to be real estate investor, it's not easy. This business is hard, especially you need to speak with different people, to make your lenders trust you, to develop credibility, and all these golden nuggets that came from Rick will help all of us. I hope so. Thank you so much, guys, and have a good night.